I don't.
It was if you don't, you should. I've told you 17 times. No, just kidding. Lincoln Grant is a merger of two schools that African Americans went to during segregation. So it's really fitting that we were able to bring this play, not only an African American story, but also a Cincinnati story, a Northern Kentucky story, a story about love, a story about family, to this venue. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you Broken River. Wait, hello there. I didn't see you guys come in. Well, you sure are quiet. I just as good as swept past you. Oh, I almost forgot. Where are my manners? My name is Skippy Sinclair. That's my name for you. Depends on where I'm at, depends on what they call me. It's 1856, January. Here in this time, in this place, they call me Uncle Otis. No last name, just Uncle Otis. Here, I'm a free black man. Not too many of us around here. But I was able to find a job sweeping in this federal courtroom here. Oh, that's where we are right now. My name changes from time to time, like I said before, but me, I pretty much stay the same. Now the snow is coming down something fierce outside. There's some sneaks of light over in the east there. It's morning, you see, and the wind seems to be just a little bit calmer right before the sun lights the city, doesn't it? Well, since you're on this journey with me, then I better tell you a little bit more about where we are. Picture this: Cincinnati, Ohio, 1856. Latitude 39 degrees north, longitude 84.5 degrees west. It's winter, and the Ohio River is damn near froze solid. Boats are encased in ice, there's no bridge, so it's almost impossible to cross back and forth from Cincinnati to Kentucky, but if you're desperate, you can make almost anything happen. It's about 9 a.m., and there's a man right now leaving the second floor office just a few blocks away after spending all night in there preparing for his day in court. Well, it looks like he's on his way in here now. Now, during the 19th century, Cincinnati was a boom town. The Ohio River provided Cincinnati residents with numerous business opportunities. Hotels, restaurants, and taverns quickly opened to meet the needs of settlers traveling westward on the Ohio River. Now, here's John Jolliffe. He was the prosecuting attorney for Claremont County from 1833 to 1837. But he grew to prominence because of a number of cases he took pro bono to help escape slaves win their freedom. He was chased out of Claremont County because of it. Today, he doesn't know, but he'll be taking on the most important case of his career. And here's his client: mother, wife, slave, Margaret Garner. She used that frozen river to escape to free land in Ohio from her captivity in Boone County, Kentucky. Just a few days ago, Margaret, along with her husband and children and her in-laws, escaped. But due to a series of unfortunate events, we end up here in this federal courtroom.
Oh, Massa, I don't believe that for a second. It's true.
I swear to you, it was a snowman this big. Me and the missus, we were just looking at each other, wondering how on earth did someone create such a thing, and it's sitting there, big as life.
Well, what did your wife say then?
She just laughed and told me to get in the house before I catch the death with the cold.
Well, I ain't worried about them hanging me, Master Jolliffe. I know if I've done the devil's work, they's gonna send me to the gallows for this. I was just making sure that my kin wasn't sent back to that place, sweet home. That was all I did. Well, Master, that's what I done. Now it's gonna be told that I did nothing more than steal Master Gaines' shadow. I say that's nothing more than a pack of misleadings.
As I told you before, last night when we met at the county jail, if Mr. Gaines' lawyers come out today and serves you with questions about how you escaped to freedom, just tell the truth. Your escape isn't anything that is not happening from here to Pittsburgh and all along the entire East Coast. They will try to bring to light some things that you may want to keep hidden. tell the truth. Your kind soul will shine through.
Don't understand nothing. All I want to do is God's will, live a life of love and happiness and give all God's children, my children too, the chance to live their life. Can't my Master Gaines see that?
Well, here he comes now. But I'm very sure that he doesn't have such a kind heart like you, Margaret.
What are you two plotting over there?
What are you worried about, Mr. Gaines? What are you expecting to leave with here today? Nothing, I hope.
This is men talk. I don't see why the girl is allowed to stay in these hallowed halls. What do I care if she stays or goes? I expect that my business here today will be swift, and me and my property will be nestled back home at Maplewood, just in time for dinner. Ah, girl. Look here, Margaret. You know where you want to be back home, resting in Maplewood. We can go right now if you want. Hey there, boy. Hurry along there now and hitch up my pony and wagon.
Now, good old boy Mr. Gaines there should know good and well that he wouldn't be sitting down to dinner at his estate he calls Maplewood in time to have a healthy serving of collard and chicken by dinner this evening. You see, this region played an important role in the intellectual and cultural development of Ohio and Kentucky during the first half of the 19th century. In 1819, Daniel Drake established the Medical College of Ohio in Cincinnati, hoping to improve medical care on the frontier. Numerous literary figures, including Harriet Beecher Stowe, the author of Uncle Tom's Cabin, lived in Cincinnati as well. Ohio abolitionists concentrated their efforts in Cincinnati because it was located directly across the river from Ohio. Cincinnati was also an ideal site to publish newspapers, anti-slavery tracts, and send to the South. This location also meant that many fugitive slaves traveled across the Ohio River through the city toward potential freedom to the north.
Go on now and saddle up my mare.
Yes, massa. Let me go get your mare.
I told him if he wasn't back at Maplewood by dinner time, then I would hang my hat as prosecutor of this case. But tell your boy there that not to move too much out of his way just yet. We still have just a few more hours to go before we settle on down back south.
That's exactly what I was expressing to them. It's what I told them. Margaret, you are disrupting your family. All your kin are back at Maplewood. It's where you were born. It was where you birthed your children. It's where you made a home. It's your home. What do you want to go and mess all that up?
So let's take a little break from all that yip-yap for a second. Now at this point, Margaret begins to respond, but thinks better of it, especially now that the judge has walked into the courtroom. Jolliffe, Chambers stand quickly, followed by Gaines. Looking confused, Margaret rises only after being prompted by Jolliffe. The judge begins to introduce the case as a federal case against the Fugitive Slave Act and asks the court if that is correct. Oh, let's take a look back in. It looks like they're about to start.
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Objection, Your Honor.
Mr. Jolliffe, how can you possibly have an objection before the court has heard any type of argument?
Well, Mr. Chambers, this case has been brought to this court chambers here in the federal court system as an infraction according to the Fugitive Slave Act, passed just a few years ago in 1850. But I feel that this case should be moved to the Hamilton County courts, and my client should be charged both for murder and attempted murder.
Mr. Jolliffe, do you realize that those two charges that you mentioned hold a greater sentence than going against the coveted Fugitive Slave Act?
I do.
So why, in God's name, would you want to go for a more egregious charge for your client?
The court proceedings continue on. Chambers asks his client Gaines to approach the witness stand and begins to question him. But for some crazy reason, I thought this would have come up by now. Why poor Margaret is clamored up in this courtroom? Well, as I mentioned earlier, the 1850s was a period in which the Underground Railroad was at its height, in and around Cincinnati, transporting numerous slaves to freedom. Margaret decided to take advantage of such opportunity to escape enslavement. On the 27th of January, 1856, Margaret, pregnant, set out for her first stop on route to freedom, along with her husband's parents, and her other children, to Joseph Pike's house in Cincinnati. Margaret and her family made it safely to Kite's house home the next day, where they awaited their next guide. Within hours, Margaret's master and federal marshals stormed Kite's house with a warrant for her arrest. Determined not to return to slavery, Margaret decided to take the lives of herself and her children. When the marshals found Margaret in the back room, she had already slit the 2-year-old daughter's throat with a butcher knife, killing her. The other children lay on the floor wounded but still alive. Well, after a little bit of back and forth arguing if she should be tried for murder in the state court or just as a runaway in the federal court, they decided on the latter. Let's listen back in.
Okay, Mr. Jolliffe, would you like to cross-examine?
Yes, sir, I would. Mr. Gaines, do you solemnly swear that the testimony you will give today in this court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I've already stated my assurance that my testimony will be truthful today.
Would you state your name for the record, please?
Archibald K. Gaines.
Thank you, sir. When you learned of Margaret's escape with her children, you immediately visited your neighbor, Mr. Marshall, is that right?
Yes.
And that was to ensure that she just hadn't wandered over to take her children to visit her husband, Robert.
Yes.
And at present, one of Margaret's children is dead, is that right?
Objection! I would like to know where counsel is going with this line of questioning with my client. We have already established the death of Mr. Gaines's property.
I'm reiterating simply that at present, Margaret's child is not alive.
Surely Mr. Gaines doesn't need to appear in the courtroom to confirm that information.
I just wasn't sure if the witness was aware that Margaret took the life of her child with a common kitchen knife.
The witness aware, the court aware, now everyone in the courtroom is aware. Can we move on?
Sir, Mr. Gaines, on this early morning encounter with your neighbor, Mr. Marshall, you discovered that Margaret's husband had also run off, is that right?
We found out that they were not where they were supposed to be. We had not surmised that they had run off together.
And when did you come to that summation?
It wasn't until round after breakfast that we set out to look for them.
Why so late?
I felt that they may have been just having a midnight stroll.
In the midst of a blizzard.
Well, we all know that the brain is half the size of a normal brain, so no telling why they would do such a thing.
We have a signed request for assistance under the Fugitive Slave Act signed by you and Mr. Marshall and delivered to our U.S. Marshal here in Ohio just around the same time that you say that you came to the conclusion that the two had run off. How would that be so?
There seems to be a slight confusion with your timeline of events.
Mr. Gaines, do you know of landowners who have had slaves run off before, is that right?
Yes, as I'm sure you do as well, Mr. Jolliffe.
In fact, Mr. Marshall himself has had to track down his own slaves who have attempted to escape to the north in the past, is that correct?
Please.
Please, Mr. Jolliffe, is this dialogue relevant to anything in particular?
I was not afforded the opportunity to just depose this witness. I asked the court for a little latitude.
A very little latitude.
So, Mr. Gaines, is this correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And Mr. Marshall suggested that you just wait a few hours and see if your missing slaves happen to turn up when they are not in the place they're supposed to be in the middle of a snowstorm.
Your Honor!
Mr. Gaines, do you have an answer?
Absolutely. My answer is I don't have a clue into Mr. Marshall's dealings with his property. It is not my business. It is his business. Maybe he deals with his property differently than I. And maybe he just didn't care about the loss of those particular slaves. I have been to college, Mr. Jolliffe, but I'm afraid I can't speak as an educated man about what qualifies as a sound business decision involving Mr. Marshall's property dealings. What I do know is that we set to leave together, just after breakfast, the morning after we found our property to be missing. Now, are these the questions I was called here to answer? Stealing a property in departure times? Judge, please tell me there is something more which calls my time here today. No response, I see. Well, thank you, Judge. I love this great state of Ohio, but my heart longs to return to the sweet old Kentucky home.
Excuse me, Mr. Gaines, I'm not sure that you have an excuse.
I don't understand.
I've not finished my line of questioning.
Pandering, what is this? I don't know what kind of courtroom that you run here in Ohio, but I am damn well sure that this type of voodoo would not be allowed across the river in the Commonwealth of Kentucky.
Mr. Gaines, I'm sure you are aware that this is a federal proceeding, and here in the state of Ohio, the judge is the federal law. In addition, the witness should address the judge as judge or his honor. I'm quite certain he has earned it.
What would you like to discuss now? The color of my favorite pair of knickers?
Mr. Gaines, you and the U.S. Marshal found Margaret and her family at the home of Joseph Kite here in Cincinnati, is that correct?
Yes.
How did you come to know the exact location of Margaret and her family so quickly? What time did you set out for Cincinnati again?
Your Honor, I think we've covered this, haven't we?
Your Honor, there is no way that Mr. Gaines and Mr. Marshall set out from their respective Boone County plantations in the great Commonwealth of Kentucky and be here in Cincinnati attempting to reprimand my client at the same time as these documents suggest.
This is outrageous.
Mr. Gaines, a moment ago.
Check the travel log on the Cincinnati-Lexington connection we took to get to Cincinnati.
Well, since your family owns that source of transportation, we will get to those forged documents in just a moment.
Objection!
You want answers?
I think we all here in this courtroom are entitled.
I will ask you again, Mr. Jolliffe, do you want answers?
All I want, Mr. Gaines, is what actually occurred on the morning that you found Margaret and her family in Cincinnati.
You are in no position to hold that truth in your arms, Mr. Jolliffe. We live in a world that has rules, and those rules have been dictated by this little glorious book called the Bible. Have you read it? According to that book, I have a great responsibility to give these slaves a better life. Well, left to their own resources, they just wander around and starve to death, not knowing how to feed or clothe themselves. People like you, Mr. Jolliffe, you weep for these slaves like Margaret here. You have luxury. You have the luxury of not knowing the true nature of these animals. And my existence, unintelligible and incomprehensible to you, saves lives. You don't want the truth because deep down in your God-given soul, you need people like me to protect people like you.
My case rests, Your Honor.
I would like to move forward with closing arguments. Your Honor, in this case, there are no winners. Whatever the outcome of this case, everyone has lost. Just a few days ago, Mr. Gaines here awoke on a sunny, albeit cold day to find that his property had run off, and since that time, he's existed in a permanent state of worry. On that day, my client, Mr. Gaines, lost an investment that had been in his family for more than 2 decades. The lineage that young slave child would have produced. A great stock of slaves would have been most advantageous for Mr. Gaines and his family, spurring along their dreams and hopes of a fuller lives with his family and friends. Furthermore, when his gal ran off, the household lost a shining presence in their lives. We know that in this case, there is no final judgment order decree that can bring Mr. Gaines's property back that was taken by the hands of that girl there. But if this court grants the petition and permits Mr. Gaines here to remove his property and take them back home where she belongs, all the parties will no longer have to suffer the agony of absence any longer, as it is my client's belief that at Maplewood it is the best and safest place for them. Our evidence has shown in this case that Margaret's life in Maplewood was nothing more than perfect. Since they were there, her mother was she was allowed to visit her husband in a neighboring plantation. They fell in love, they married. She had a family-oriented life at Maplewood. Thank you.
On the 28th of January, 1856, there held in this state of Ohio, a crime did occur. The defendant, Mrs. Margaret Garner at the time, resided in the county of Boone, in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And upon the 28th day of January, 1856, she traveled to the state of Ohio, as was her God-given right to do. If left to my opposing counsel, he would say that Margaret's travel was illegal, owing to the fact that he thinks that she was owned by Mr. Gaines, and that Mr. Gaines alone could dictate her travel. This is where we disagree. Her crimes, as laid out by Mr. Chambers, citing the Fugitive Slave Act, does not apply to Margaret, because she was in fact set free when she was a child. Her travel to the state of Ohio when she was a child, accompanying her mistress, set her free. The question in this case, if there be a question at all, will, in my judgment, be rather a question of law than one of fact. I suppose that there will be no question of fact, substantially, in the case when all the evidence is out, and it will be for you, Judge Pendry, to decide whether or not the defendant committed the offense of murdering her young child. We think on the part of the government that there is no question about it either one way or the other, neither a question of fact or a question of law, and that whatever Margaret's intentions may have been, whether they were good or otherwise, she did not have the right to take the life of that child. There is no question. But what she is guilty of is committing the crime of murder. We won't claim, in that case, Your Honor, that Margaret should be charged as a fugitive as written in the Fugitive Slave Act. We don't claim that she didn't leave her home at Maplewood, or as she would call it, sweet home. But we do claim that upon the 28th of January, 1856, she struck her child with a deadly blow. And whether she believed her actions were justified, well, that's for God to decide, not us. But if it were a question whether that action were legal or not, we can't answer that. The answer should be no. It is not necessary for me, Your Honor, at this stage of the case to repeat all of the facts. I shall leave that to be shown by the testimony here in this courtroom today. And if any question that my client did not commit that coveted law of murder, His Honor will have every right to tell me to go jump in the Ohio River, and I will do so. Thank you, Your Honor.
Now, we all sit here in the courtroom and watch as the judge considers his next few words carefully. He has to decide whether the defendant is guilty or not guilty. Since this is a federal court, the only crime in which he's able to decide is that of the allegations against the Fugitive Slave Act. Now the judge knows that murder charges can be brought against the defendant, but it has to be done at another time. The judge has listened to the witness's testimony, and now it's up to him to decide if he believes that the witness was telling the truth or not. Well, it looks like he's made his decision, and of course, he rules that Margaret has carried out a great injustice against the Fugitive Slave Act, and gives him no choice but to allow Mr. Gaines to have his property returned to him. I guess it's my time to step in. But it's not her fault.
Judge, can we please have a bailiff to come into the courtroom to have this boy removed?
Nope, I don't think so. This is definitely not right. Margaret doesn't want to. She doesn't need your court's justification of her humanity. What the hell is this? What is your motto here? E pluribus unum? Well, gentlemen, when you get it wrong, you sure you get it wrong. Here's Margaret facing hanging the gallows from the hangman, and there's Massa hiding in the government's pocket. And what are you doing? You're going to reward Massa and send Margaret downriver.
Boy, are you finished?
Don't you wish. I'm just getting warmed up. Now, I don't know what fancy law school you went to, Yale, Harvard, Brown, but their definition of the Constitution is wrong. It's cold. You're about to step foot on the wrong side of history. You're reconstructing the Titanic here. Okay, bad example. You'll understand that in about 50 years. But what I'm trying to say is that you're trying to rebuild a sinking ship, a vessel that's going to run smack dab into an iceberg called justice. And if you think you're spreading the word of Jesus Christ with your judicial reflections, you better think again. Because I say you're killing the very spirit that this country proclaims and instills. What a shame. What kind of show are you putting on here today? I mean, the only class in this act is sitting right here on the witness stand in front of you, and I say that this woman's soul is intact, it's tainted, and it's not broken whatsoever.
You are out of order.
Definitely not out of order. You don't know what out of order is. But I need to remember, I would show you, but I need to remember what part of history. In the future, women have control of their bodies and their souls. Right now, in the future, there's an entire movement dedicated to end sexual assaults, like the one Massa has done on poor Margaret here. And I have seen girls like these, younger than these, their arms torn out, their legs ripped off. But there's nothing like the sight of an amputated spirit. You think you're merely sending a woman back home to Kentucky with her loving Massa, but I say you're sending this woman to her death. And why? Because she's not a man? Because she's not white? You send this woman back to Kentucky, Your Honor, and you're going to reserve your place in heaven. Now, as the judge walked into the courtroom, I heard all of you call him honorable. Well, I'm not sure if there's any able in that honor. The ability has fallen. It's gone away. Now, I don't know if Margaret taking the life of her baby is right or wrong. I'm not the judge. But I can tell you this. She would never purchase a man or woman and make them her slave. And that's called integrity. That's courage. And that's the stuff that people should be made.
Over my dead body is Margaret coming with you. What's wrong with you? You're nothing but a piece of tar on the bottom of my shoe. That's what's wrong.
You ain't nothing but a dirty rat, and your dead body is just what I need to walk over to get out of this place. You might have been a decent man if your father raised you right, if you didn't beat your wife, if you hadn't raped me. My baby is home now. I made sure of that. And when my boys are all grown up, they're gonna whoop you for doing that to me. And with no regret for the things you've done to me. Beating a woman doesn't do nothing, and I'm gonna laugh when everything you wish for crumbles down. You thought that raping me would make me submit to your will, and it did for a while. But I'm free now. No one is ever gonna treat me that way no more. With you, I feel that I wanted to go somewhere I couldn't. It felt like my spirit was snatched out of me. And I never complained about that, because I know you would just beat me. But so help me God, I'd rather die than go back to sweet home with you.
Come on, you're coming with me. I'm going to take you on a journey. Thank you guys for coming. Hopefully you enjoyed it. We will do a brief question and answer if you wanted to do that. If you don't, you're free to